All right. Welcome to another episode of Bagels and Batflips. I am pleased to welcome back Justin Alintoff from the Euro Championships and also welcome him back on another Shalom Sluggers sponsored, what should I call it? I'll say podcast, video blog, something like that, just to kind of come on and talk about the tournament with us. Justin, thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Always happy to, talk to you and, support anything Shalom Sluggers, anything Israel baseball related. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm just going to hop right in. How was it for you going over to the Euros from playing indie ball here, for a whole year and then going right over? Did you feel in mid-season form? Was your body kind of tired from the season?
I felt like I was really ready. And so I stopped playing with the Ducks about 4 weeks before the Euros. And so because of that, I had to kind of stay in shape. So I was throwing with Alex Katz. We were meeting up on Long Island and I felt honestly really ready once, that plane touched down in Amsterdam. And I was excited that I was able to do well because I felt like I was in position to go longer distance and my arm felt healthy. And, I knew I was giving it all I got because that was the end of my season. So I felt like I was ready and turned out I was.
Absolutely. So game one, France, you get the ball, right?
Yep.
What's going through your mind is, you're playing France in a really must-win first game.
Yeah, I knew the importance of the game. It was a weird start to the game. We were supposed to play early, then the rain just went crazy. There was a protester who rushed the field once we kind of got all settled in. But you know what? These are things that you expect when you've got Israel on your chest. You know that there's going to be some adversity, whether it's rain, protesters, or whatever it may be. We knew our job was to kind of win that game. And thankfully we did. We kind of had a slow start, which is, to be expected with bad weather, with, kind of, I guess, the game one jitters. But the fact that we were able to come through, the offense really, really picked it up that game. And so that was a huge win to kind of start on the right foot. And then we carried that, kind of through the seeding round a little bit. And, we're able to do some damage and win an elimination game. But, that game against France was huge. And it was an honor to get that ball game one. I knew what that meant. And I was really, didn't take it lightly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I watched that game and, it was a tough battle. I mean, it was not an easy win, especially, it was tough in the early going, kind of in the field too. What kind of was going through your head when you were pitching, I think you went 3 2/3, what was going through your head? Was it, because there were some errors there, I do know. As a pitcher, how do you respond to that?
I knew that there were a lot of younger players there that were watching me, right? I'm getting the ball game one, and I've played 3 years of professional baseball, and errors are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. Nobody wants to make an error. My job is to make the next pitch, right? And so if there's an error behind me, that sucks for me. That sucks for the person who made the error. That sucks for the team. But I have two choices. One, complain and be a baby and, act immature, or two, say, hey, you're all right. I got you, and do my job. And, so I knew they wanted to keep my pitch count down because they wanted me to come back on a shorter rest for the first round of eliminations, which I did against Team Switzerland. But you know what? The errors were unfortunate. They're unfortunate for everyone. But, I felt like I was able to keep the team in the game and kind of steady the playing field a little bit. In that first inning, we had a couple errors, and then I think it was bases loaded. I got a double play ball, and we turned 2. So that was huge that the defense picked me up there. So it's baseball, right? The defense makes mistakes. The defense makes amazing plays. Itai made a great play for me in center field. The first batter of the Switzerland game, dive and catch in the gap. So I've got their back the way they've got my back. And errors happen. It's a part of the game, but, it's also, you have to be a next pitch mentality, especially as a starter, because if you let the previous pitch just kill you, you're dead out there. So I was able to turn the page quickly, keep the team in position to win, and win is what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Also that first game, I don't know if a lot of people think this way too, and it's just kind of a baseball mentality, but how did Agresti call the game? Because I think that's a big, are you calling the game? Is he calling the game? Or is it kind of a chemistry thing? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, so I talked to him pregame, and I was like, listen, I feel confident in these few pitches most of the time. You're a professional catcher. You know what you're seeing. You know what you're doing. Whatever you think looks good, I trust it. And, that game, we called maybe some pitches that shouldn't have been called. And, my execution was poor, so that's not on him. That's on me for the poor execution. But that second game against Switzerland, we really stuck with fastball, cutter, two-seam, four-seam, cutter. And that was really, really effective because I would go cutter in a, behind in the count, cutter ahead in the count, inside, outside. And the same thing with the two-seam running in and the four-seam. And we kind of stuck with that. And that was the bread and butter that led me to have 109 pitches through 9. So a low pitch count, for a complete game. And we really got on the same page for that game because he was seeing it well. He would call a back door and I'd be like, I agree. So, we really, really clicked on game 2. And I feel like from now on, we got an understanding of what would work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could totally see that. I mean, you shoved in game 2. That was electric. And I was actually talking to Holtz about it, and he said it was really awesome to see you so fired up and so pumped up. Can you walk me through, like, you're throwing a complete game, and like what is going through your mind as you're just in innings 3 and 4, 5, 6, and you're all the way to 9? Like, what goes through your head in those middle innings?
Yeah, I mean, so I threw 8 1/3 for the Ducks, and I threw 8 for the Ducks, and I've thrown complete games in my past, and but this was an interesting one because I knew going into it that this was my last time pitching for a little while because the season was coming to an end. So I was like, you know what, I'm going, and there's few things in life, and I was telling this to a younger team earlier this week, that mean more to me than the game of baseball, and that mean more to me than representing Israel and the state of Israel. And so when I combined both, I was like, I'm not going to go 6 1/3, be like, I said, I'm going. So I told Fish pregame, give me the ball. If I'm in a jam, I'm in a jam. I'll figure it out. Just let me go. And so, in the 5th inning, 6th inning, I'm in the dugout and I know I just got to stay up and I got to stay ready. I would take a little sip of the C4, drink some water, and just realize that, like, all right, the 5th was great. We got to make the 6th great. We got to turn the page. We got to flip. We got to stay ready. We got to stay locked in because I knew in the 6th inning, 7th inning, 8th inning, I was like, I'm going another. And so I kept telling myself, hey, 3 outs. Okay. And then I get to the 6th. I'm like, all right, 9 outs, 6 outs, 3. Like, I just kept knowing, like, we got to keep going. And the offense really picked it up early for me. So I was kind of on cruise control for a little bit of that game, which was really nice because I was just able to kind of fill up the zone and rely on the defense. But I knew I was going complete game before I threw the first pitch, which is interesting because that's the first time I've ever felt that.
Maybe you should think that more often then.
Yeah.
Go with that mentality all the time. I mean, and you said you were talking to a younger team. Did you coach that? Was it 10U or 12U Blue Sox? Which one was
12U
it?
Blue Sox.
12U Blue Sox. Hey, you guys had a good showing too, if I recall.
We did. It was really cool to see the kids that are excited about baseball, excited about representing Israel, and able to combine those two. And they're all great kids and some really good players, honestly. I mean, they're 12, right? So it's hard to say, but at that level, we had kids that were striking out the world, that were hitting homers. We had one kid hit 4 in one game. So wow. we had a really good showing, a really good team, and I think everybody can take something away that was positive from it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really good to get kids involved, especially now, as a young age. You need to fill the pipeline a little bit, and, it's spreading, which is great. I kind of want to segue into, I asked Holtz the same question, but, when you get there, when you got to the Euros, right, what was it like to be Team Israel? You can't really wear anything that's Israel. You have to train in another city before going to the tournament. What effects does that have on the guys? Because I'm sure it doesn't, like, it takes a little bit of a mental toll.
Yeah,
maybe,
we started in Harlem, and that's kind of where I thought I didn't really know what was necessarily going on. But when we got to Rotterdam, we had a security briefing. They're like, you guys are not allowed to leave the hotel. You're going building, field, building. That's it. And they had security cameras set up. They knew our names and faces. And they're like, listen, it's something that we have to do because that's just the state of the world. I remember my grandma telling me about golf courses back in the day where it said no Jews or dogs. And, she always said that I hope that there would be, safer for my Jewish grandchildren one day. And, unfortunately, now I carry that same hope for my grandchildren because, I can't wear an Israel shirt in public. I can't wear a yarmulke maybe in public. And it's sad, right? We've come a long way. In the Netherlands, you had Anne Frank less than 100 years ago hiding in an attic because she was Jewish. So I'm extremely blessed, and we're all extremely blessed that we're even able to play a baseball game and represent Team Israel. But we do have a long way to go as a society in terms of acceptance and understanding of others. But I think the team handled it really, really well. Obviously, you had the people that were like complaining, myself included, because it's like, what the heck? I want to go check out Rotterdam. But it's an understanding of like, we're not Team Spain. We're not Team France. We're Team Israel. And that says something about who we are, what we stand for, and who we pray to. And there's a lot of people in this world that don't accept that. And we need to take that seriously. And we did. But we were told, listen, we're here to play baseball, right? Everything else is a bonus. If we can't do it, we're here to play baseball. And so we kind of adopted that mentality of we're here to play baseball. And that's what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, overall, I don't know if it was a result that everyone was looking for, but it's you get 7 or 8 games, and like talking to Holtz about it too. You have guys who maybe have not seen a live pitch in a while, but then you have guys who are playing pro ball. So in those 7, 8 games, it may be very hard to, if you don't start extremely hot, to get stuff going. But I thought there was really only one game where it was like, all right, maybe like, you guys weren't really ultra competitive, but every other game, it was like you guys were in it, and battling and grinding. And, there's something to be said for that. How did you feel that the team did as a whole?
Well, that's kind of the bummer, right? Because I think that we had a really competitive roster, top to bottom, lineup, a great staff, good on the bases, young talent. And so I think that we did I know that we underperformed, but I also think that we realized that, if we can all elevate our game to a little bit, we're right there, because we are right there, right? All those games that we lost, like to Germany 10-9, we're right there.
Right.
France, obviously we beat. Switzerland, Croatia, we beat. But some of these teams we know we can hang with. We were with the Netherlands in their home stadium, and it was a close game in later innings. So we know our staff is legit. We know our lineup can swing it, and we know the defense is solid and will come around too. So we're going to continue growing and building, and looking forward to 27.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also like you had guys like, Itai stepped up in a big way, playing center field, like huge. I mean, because that's not his ordinary position. Like, he's a pitcher, and throwing him in the outfield, and you said it, Holt said it, making big time plays at a position like that's just getting your name called and doing it, like going out there and just playing with your heart and playing baseball, and you got to love it. And
not only that, not to cut you off, he was solid defensively, and he got on base a ton too. So he really, deserves his flowers, because he played a heck of a tournament in a position that he probably hasn't played in a long time, and he looked like he'd been playing his whole life, and he was really outstanding. But there's a ton of players I can highlight that really showed up and showed out, right? We were expecting to have Benjamin Rosengard at short. He wasn't here because he was playing the Pioneer League Championship. So we put Nadav Machlin at short, lights out. He was fantastic at shortstop, swung the bat pretty well. And then Rosengard came, and we moved Machlin to second, but he really held it down at short. And that's one of the toughest positions on the field. And there's a ton of guys I could highlight. I could go on all day about how so many guys stepped up, because they really did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really cool because like now I feel like, I've had a bunch on the podcast, like watching you guys play together is really cool. It's like you get a huge sense of pride from it. Can you talk to me more about maybe, because this time around you guys were playing, like you were playing for more than just baseball, with, as you alluded to, with everything going on in the world right now, and, your security's tight. Like this is more than baseball,
right,
for you guys. So can you walk me through like how that helped, maybe like, get you guys all closer and more on the same page? Because I know, like other teams may have, a lot of time training together, whereas like you guys don't have that time. So you don't have a lot of time to have that camaraderie and build it like the other teams. But, does this tournament kind of different that you're playing for something bigger? Does that help, or do you think the camaraderie is always there?
I can tell you it helped me, because I have represented a ton of teams, a ton of different organizations and colleges and cities. But especially now with the state of the world that we're in, when you're representing Israel, it says something about who you are. It says something about what you believe in. And I knew that it was just different. I knew that it was important. And if you see the video of that complete game I threw against Switzerland, I get the last out and I just lose it on the mound. Like I just break down. I'm hugging Blake. I'm hugging Chase, crying, because I knew how significant it really was for me to be Jewish in a country that was occupied less than 100 years ago by Nazis, and people who would frankly want to see us fail and want to see us dead. To be able to go succeed really meant a lot. But I know how significant it is to represent Israel, and it's a really empowering feeling, because listen, whether you're playing baseball or whether you're on social media, right, and you're representing and defending Israel, it says something about who you are as a person. And, I knew that it said something about us as people we flew out there and we put on our jersey and buttoned it up, and it said Israel. And that said something about who we were. And, we knew what it meant. And I certainly knew what it meant as I was in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning that I'm pitching for Team Israel. And, that was a really special feeling.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you hit it on the head. And what were the other teams' reactions to maybe like protest, if they had any. I don't know if they did, but you mentioned protesting. Like, what is their reaction to it? Because I'm interested to know.
Yeah. So one thing about me, I'm very open. Like
Hmm.
I'll talk to anyone. I'll pop my chain out and say, "Hey, how's it going? I'm with Team Israel," even though we weren't really supposed to, say who we were
Yeah.
playing with. But I was like, I'm on Team Israel. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I'm on Team Israel. So I never dealt with anything negative from any of the other teams. I was very grateful that everyone really showed me a lot of respect. Team Germany, I made a couple friends. Team France, Team Croatia. So there were a lot of Team Switzerland. So a lot of guys were really kind, really respectful, and just appreciated it for what it was, which is a baseball tournament that brings different countries, different people, different teams together and not separates us. And in a world where everyone's so separated, we need to cling to the things that bring us together. And baseball is one of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great thing about baseball. No matter what, you're still playing the same game.
No doubt.
When, now I kind of want to segue into, I know you did some solo traveling after, and I know you went to London, right?
I did.
So can you kind of walk me through what happened there? Because I heard it's quite a story.
Yeah. So, me being me, I was walking near Big Ben, and there was a Palestine protest, which, no worries. But I took my chain out and I said, does anyone want to have a conversation? Because, it was Yom Kippur, and it was the day of a Manchester terrorist attack at a synagogue, which killed, 2 Jews in a synagogue. And so I said, listen, let's talk. Does anyone want to have a discussion? Maybe I can change one person's mind, right? But so I talked to a bunch of people. Some were a little more receptive than others, as you can imagine. But I'm walking down the street and I'm walking the opposite direction of the protest. And a reporter stopped me and we started talking. And he asked me how I felt about the terrorist attack. And I told him, this is terrible. This should never happen. These people got killed because of their religion, because they're worshiping on the holiest day. There's no reason for this. We should all come out and condemn this. This is unacceptable. People got killed for no reason other than the fact that they're Jewish. And a woman stopped me and said, yeah, but look at what's happening in Gaza. Look at what the IDF is doing. But look at this. And I said, ma'am, there is no reason to talk about a terrorist attack and include the word but. We have to just openly and outwardly condemn it, period. There is no reason for a but. And the reporter got my name, and I woke up to like 7 missed calls from my mom because she was like, I don't know who you talked to, but you are directly quoted in the Telegraph. I was like, oh, cool. So I checked it out and got the quote, and it was cool. So I got a screenshot of it. I got the link to the article. I tried to find it in the newspaper, but couldn't. But I'm proud. Listen, my name is Justin Alintoff. I just turned 27. I'm an Israeli citizen. I'm an American citizen. I'm Jewish. I believe that the state of Israel should exist. I'm a proud Zionist. Here's my faith. You know what I mean? I'm proud to tell that to anyone because I know that we're on the right side of history. And so these people all hide their face. That's their prerogative. I'm very happy to talk to anyone, discuss with anyone, educate anyone, because I know that we are armed with the most important thing that we can be armed with, and that's knowledge. And so
100%.
I'm here to talk.
Absolutely.
Got me into trouble in the past, but I think it's important for us to kind of spread the light and spread some truth and stand for what we believe in, which is that Israel should exist. The Jewish people should have a homeland, and, we should all live in peace.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and the big part of it is, like you said, like, have the conversation. There's not a lot of that anymore. There's not a lot of conversing. There's not a lot of hearing someone's point of view, which I think we could benefit a lot from instead of, just maybe reading a headline or not really caring what the other person has to say. We're all human at the end of the day. And I think that's really been lost. And I agree with everything you said. I'm proud to be a Zionist. I'm proud that, what we're doing at Shalom Sluggers. I'm proud that I'm Jewish, like things like that you have to realize. And I think a lot of people did wake up when October 7th happened. And I think, it was a not terrible, terrible thing, but in a way, it just also ignited every single Jew in the world, pretty much, in the sense of pride, in the sense of I love Israel. And you know what I mean? Like, it was just such a turning point for me in my life, too, where I kind of looked at myself and I'm like, okay, like, maybe I should start going to synagogue more. Maybe I should, take being Jewish more seriously. And I did. And it's turned out to be great for me, great for, my family, too. Like, I'm proud. I'm damn proud of it. And, and I thank you for sharing that because that is hard to share. But not everybody is open, which is okay too. But, like, was there any backlash or it was just 7 missed calls from your mom?
No backlash from
All
my
right,
mom.
cool.
Oh my gosh, no way. But there is another thing that happened at the protest that I'd like to, highlight because it was Yom Kippur. There was a guy holding a, Jewish for, Jews against Israel sign. And I went up to him. Do you know what today is? I said, yeah, it's Yom Kippur. So, oh, okay, great. So, you're Jewish, because a lot of people want to separate Judaism from Israel. I don't think you can. And so I told him, do you know what the most important prayer in Judaism is? If you know one prayer, you know this prayer. I don't know it. So it's the Shema. Okay. So I said, do you know the first two words? I don't know. I said, Shema Israel. Hear, O Israel. And I said, maybe, you're Jewish. You're holding a sign that says I'm Jewish and I'm against Israel. Maybe you should go to a temple and learn a little bit about what it means to be Jewish. And he said, you know what? I think you're right. I don't know what ended up. I said, have a nice day, walked away. And I don't know what ended up happening. But maybe he went into a temple and said, let me learn a little bit about what it means to be Jewish, because we pray and we face the Western Wall, wherever it may be, right? So if I'm in Florida, I would face east. If I'm in China, I would face west. That's just how a temple goes. You say Shema Israel. The bars on Talit are the bars on the flag. The symbol of the flag is the Star of David, which is the same thing I'm wearing around my neck. I could go on and on about how there's a connection, and that doesn't even include the archaeological connection or the ancient connection to the land of Israel. There's just so much that ties the Jewish people to the state of Israel that the people that are Jews against Israel just simply don't know about what it means to be Jewish. And they have a warped view of what Israel is because they've probably never been to Israel.
I was going to say that they've probably never been there before.
Right. So you don't really understand what it means to be Jewish, and you don't really understand what Israel is, but you know enough to wave a flag and hold a sign. And so, I think that the way that we could combat that is just by trying to educate some of these people that are, Jewish and opposed to Israel would be the equivalent of being a chicken in favor of KFC, in my opinion.
100%. And that's a great point. I think, everybody can use a little more education around the topic. And, like you said, it's all about the connection to Israel. And a lot of people who are protesting, like you said, may not know. And what you did was great, went up to him, approached him, and it was a nice conversation, wasn't rude, wasn't obnoxious. And it was like an adult conversation. And he listened, it just proves that people are willing to listen if you come at them and you're just like, hey, and question them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great, and now I'm going to segue back into baseball. So thank you for the story because, I think it's very important, especially for younger kids to hear it, and I think you coaching, the Blue Sox is really cool because you've grown up and are now going through the Israel baseball program, and they look up to you and they're like, you know what, if he's a proud Jew, he's a proud Zionist, I'm going to be that way too. So does that, when you're coaching, does that, kind of run through your veins a little bit, kind of in the back of your mind?
You know what? It's something that I like to do where, I like to do with team. I'll clean up the dugout, the locker room. We had a few lunches in this tent in Rotterdam, and I'd stay after, clean it up, make it perfect, because I know what we're representing. We're representing Israel. We're representing Israel baseball. We're representing Judaism. We're representing Hashem. We're trying to do all these things where we're representing something that isn't a team, team country, right? We're representing a team that a lot of people don't want to be there. And I know that we're going to be able to win with more kindness and more mitzvahs and more goodness. And so when the janitor comes by, oh, who ate here? Team Israel? It's spotless, just that little thing. And I kind of echoed that to the kids. I said, hey, you're not just playing for the team 11U elite, right? You're playing for Team Israel. And so what we need to do, because a lot of the world says, look at if we leave it disgusting, they're like Team Israel, classless. But if we clean it up, it's perfect, it's spotless, it's neat. Maybe we can change one mind to realize that we are just trying to play baseball and have fun and, spread that light. And so, I stayed and cleaned up in Rotterdam. I stayed and cleaned up in Royal Palm because this is something that, like I said, we're representing Team Israel and we need to put our best foot forward because we are trying to establish that, hey, we really are thankful to be here and we belong here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the saying, leave it as you found it. And if it's not clean when you found it, clean it up.
Right. It's, I think you can go even a little bit further because now you're representing a team that a lot of people are like, these people shouldn't be here. This team shouldn't be here. Team Israel's got to leave, or even protesting against it. And so it's we want to go above and beyond to show that, look, we deserve to be here. We belong here. We're proud to be here. We're thankful to be here. So let's help out. Let's clean up, help another team out. Let's do extra good because, I knew that we were under the magnifying glass, just as Team Israel. And so when you're under the magnifying glass, if you do extra good, maybe people say, you know what? They really are a solid group. We can take that magnifying glass away and just let them play and experience it like any other team.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's the small things, because you're right. If you do the small things right, you'll be just fine. And I think one of my last questions for you is, what did you take away personally from this experience in Rotterdam, not only as a player but also as a person?
I would say the most important thing that I got out of it was some new incredible friends. I mean, I will single a few out, but I mean, everyone that I met has been really wonderful with Team Israel. And I told that to the 12U team. I said, listen, the most important thing that I've gotten from Team Israel is this incredible connection and network of people that are just fantastic people, like-minded people, kind, and people that I'm going to stay in touch with for the rest of my life. So I'm extremely blessed and grateful for that opportunity to, create new connections. But I'm also thankful that I got to represent Israel, see the world, pitch well and do well, and get a little taste of what it is to be Israeli, because we were locked down. We had to turn our jerseys inside out. We had to turn our sweatshirts inside out, and no Hebrew was allowed to be spoken in public. We traveled to the stadium in vans of groups of 6. And so you kind of got that feeling of there's people here that don't want you here. And that's how Jews have felt for a really long time, a really, really long time. Whether it's the Holocaust or poisoning the wells in the bubonic plague or, what happened in Spain. This has been the Jewish story, that we've been attacked, isolated, oppressed. And so to kind of feel, hey, we're isolated in the building, we're isolated on the first floor, we have to flip our jerseys inside out. I think that was something important that I never experienced, but the Jewish lineage has experienced since its inception, right? Since we were slaves in Egypt. We've kind of been under that oppressed microscope, but we refuse to be victims now. And now we are victors. And even though we didn't finish first, we won just by being there. I'm wearing a Star of David on my hat, and the opposing team is standing with their hand on their heart for Hatikva. That was unfathomable in very recent memory. And so we have a long way to go, but I'm really blessed to see the fruits of where we're going.
Great answer. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, your busy schedule, to come on, hang out with me. But as always, it's a pleasure to have you on, and, looking forward to having you on again in the future, and looking forward to see what you're going to even do better now in your professional career.
No doubt. That's the plan. I appreciate you having me. Always a pleasure. Shalom, Sluggers rocks. You guys are doing great stuff and, highlighting Jewish baseball players. So I'm happy to be a part of it. And I appreciate you taking the time as well.
Thank you.